What is up, car addicts? So it's been about a week since the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC update released, and I figured I'd make a review video giving my thoughts and honest opinions about this update. And before we start, I do want to mention that I'm sure the majority of Rockstar's team is working very hard on GTA 6, and that's probably why this DLC is as broken and lackluster as it is. But at the end of the day, as I've said before, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, and there's a severe lack of quality control and very underwhelming content in this update. So most of this video will be a rant, which I normally don't do, but I'm always straight up with you guys and brutally honest. I don't like to sugarcoat anything. So as you guys may know, I read most of the comments, and I've had countless conversations with friends and other YouTubers about this DLC, and I've yet to hear anyone say this update is great or good. As a matter of fact, I made a poll in my community tab, and this is the first time I've ever seen the majority of the vote being absolutely terrible. At 1, this update has brought more bad than good, which I never thought we would see in a DLC. Typically there's a balance of good and bad in these updates, but this one is leaning heavily towards the negative side of the spectrum. So firstly, let's talk about the most controversial change of the entire DLC, and that's the removal of almost 200 cars from the in-game websites, including OG cars and even DLC cars, then locking them behind Event Week car cycles, and of course the new Vinewood Car Club that requires a GTA Plus subscription. The community has had a strong uproar about this, but honestly I highly doubt Rockstar's going to revert it. I think it's here to stay, which is a real shame, and we can thank that in part to GTA Plus. That's the main reason. But anyways, starting with day 1 content of the DLC, we logged in and saw a total of 5 cars on the websites and 2 aircraft on Warstock, with the main highlight of the update of course being the Raiju jet. We also have new missions, but to host these you actually have to install a $1.4 million upgrade called the Operations Terminal to the Avenger, and if you don't already own an Avenger, you're going to need to add another roughly $6 million to that so you can actually buy the Avenger itself. Then you can actually start the new missions, which there's only 6 new ones. Pretty disappointing. The missions themselves are decent at best. I wouldn't say they're great. Almost every mission is the same thing. Go to a location, kill some people, steal something and bring it back, and spoiler alert, the payout for each mission is like 20k. Plus the first time bonus of 250k after you complete all 6, which totals a little less than 400,000. That's really bad, especially when you consider that really doesn't even cover half of the cost of the Operations Terminal upgrade that you paid, the 1.4 million. You still got another million that you spent extra, and not to mention the additional upgrades and the cost of the Avenger itself if you didn't already own it. So, I mean, you're investing over what, $6, $7, $8 million for the Avenger with the upgrades and terminal and stuff, and you get a payout of less than 400,000. That's just absolutely terrible. So each mission should have paid out at least 50 to 60, maybe even 70k in my opinion, but 20k is pretty much a slap in the face. I mean, you spent at least a couple grand in ammo, so what does that leave you left over with? Not much. Then of course we have the new weapons for this DLC, so we only received 1 for the entire DLC, that's including drip feed, so only 1 gun, and that's the tactical SMG. So I did do a thorough video testing this thing, but it's basically the new best gun to use for shooting out of vehicles overall, so at least that part of it is decent, and that's pretty much it for day 1 content. 5 new cars, a couple aircraft, new missions and 1 gun, and some miscellaneous clothes and stuff, but not really all that great overall if I'm being honest when you consider all the factors. Now let's discuss some of these day 1 cars in more detail. The first one is the Grotti Italy GTO Stinger TT, which is just an unnecessarily long name. The car itself is actually scaled up in size compared to other GTA 5 cars. It's a pretty massive vehicle, especially when you compare it to the original Italy GTO. If you look at the license plate in particular, you can see the major difference there too. And then the handling of the car itself is pretty terrible. It has a massive dead zone in the steering upon the initial steering input, and it's pretty bouncy over bumps as well. Now it does offer HSW and Amani tech, which is great for some more speed and of course armor, etc., but that still doesn't fix the massive size of the car or the terrible handling. Not to mention, when you factor in all the upgrades and stuff, you're into this car well over $4 million, which is pretty nuts. That's something you really should think about before you invest in this car. Now, let's move on to the next car, shall we? So we have the Monstrosity. So this is arguably one of the better cars from day one of the DLC. It's a ton of fun to drive, plus it offers HSW and Amani tech. However, there's a ton of bugs with the customization. For some reason, the snorkel upgrade is not available in the CEO office custom shop for some reason, but it's available everywhere else in game. Very strange. There's also some bugs with the spare tire option, and then the window panels act like a spoiler upgrade and add traction, and that really ruins the look of the Monstrosity in my opinion. And obviously you don't want to be at a disadvantage in terms of racing, so you're sort of forced to put it on there. And lastly, if you install any of the interior upgrades, for some reason you can't shoot any weapons out of it. I don't understand why. Continuing to the Walton. So this one's kind of cool, some good customization as well, but honestly really random. I mean, why did they put the effort in adding this truck instead of a newer one that a large portion of the community actually wanted, like a Ram TRX for example, or Rivian R1T, etc. I mean, I just don't really see the point in a random lifted Chevy S10, especially when you consider that this is the only truck in the entire DLC, including unreleased strip feed content and all that. So I don't mind them adding a truck like this in the game. It's just the fact that they chose this instead of the popular trucks that community actually wanted to see added in future updates. Next up, we have the Rattel, an off-roader that's basically a reskin of the trophy truck in the Desert Raid with a little more power and rear-wheel drive instead of it being 4x4. The customization is decent, but honestly, again, this was an unnecessary addition to the game when the trophy truck in Desert Raid already existed. There's a ton of different off-roaders they could have added over this. I don't think anybody wanted another trophy truck Desert Raid-esque vehicle in the game. I think we had plenty. But anyways, moving along to the Click Wagon. So this one was actually really cool and fun to customize. I was really surprised with all the detail it has, and it's not that bad of an addition to the game. My concern is, again, with the lack of cars in this DLC, only 9 in total with drip feed, why add this over other vehicles the community was wanting Rockstar to add? That's my whole dilemma here. These cars are just really random, and they seem like the extra cars you would have in a DLC as sort of the normal random cars, and then of course you always have those 4 or 5 cars that are really popular that everybody wanted. This update, it just seems like almost all the cars are that way, just the most random things they can think of. But anyways, continuing, we have the Raiju Jet. So this jet, honestly incredible, by far the highlight of the DLC. It's the new fastest jet in the game. It has the VTOL, stealth function, weapons, etc. Plus, honestly, I think it's very fairly priced, all things considering, especially with the GTA economy. So really no complaints on this one. I mean, maybe the fact that the explosive MGs are a bit too separated from each other, making it a bit harder to hit smaller targets, but other than that, it's just overall an incredible addition to the game, along with the nerf to the Hydra Laser, which I know some people are complaining about, but I feel like the nerf they did to those explosive cannons was kind of needed, and I think the jets are a lot more balanced now, even though the Raiju does dominate most of them, but it's the new jet. It is what it is. And lastly, we have the Streamer 216. Let's be honest, this is a plane that's going to be instantly forgotten. It's not all that special, holding only 4 players, and not really any special abilities to stand out compared to the other weaponized prop planes. And speaking of aircraft, Rockstar added these 2 new aircraft, and 1 drip feed aircraft, which I'll show here shortly, but they didn't give us any new hangar spaces. Why? We're still limited to 20, forcing a lot of players to sell other custom aircraft to make space for new ones. It's just really annoying. They should have at least added 5 new spots or something. Now let's talk about the drip feed content. So we only have 4 new cars, 1 aircraft, and 2 bicycles. Yes, I said bicycles, not motorcycles, bicycles. And if you're following the math here, That means we only have 9 total new cars for this DLC, 3 aircraft, and 2 bicycles no one asked for, especially a strip feed. And yes, some of these are kind of cool, like the Charger EV, the Ghostbusters car, etc., and the weaponized Kanata, but the Hot Ring Hellfire was just completely unnecessary. The Renault base car is cool, but they gave us the electric variant instead of the normal gas-powered one, and then threw them a sports class for some reason instead of the compacts class. Plus, again, the bicycles were just completely random, especially locking them behind drip feed, and with the lack of cars in the update. Overall, if you really think about it, pretty much all the cars in this DLC, again, are extremely random. I mean, if they're actually going to put effort into making some of these cars, why not give the community the cars they've actually been waiting a while for? I mean, we only have 2 major DLCs a year. Cars like the Evo 8, the Miata, the Ram TRX, the Lexus LFA. These are cars that bring people back to the game. Not a random Chevy lifted pickup truck, a wagon variant of a Click, or a reskinned trophy truck / desert raid. The cars in this update are just not that great. But anyways, let's move on to the fun stuff. So, the bugs of the update that were introduced. So, we have the MOC glitch, which would delete your current personal vehicle that you had out, the Kaio heist weapon loadout glitch, and of course, the new car insurance glitch, which randomly removes the insurance on some players' cars, causing them to lose said cars if they get blown up. Now, granted, at the time of this recording, Rockstar did fix the first 2 within a couple days, and they're actually currently fixing the insurance bug, so at least they do care in that regard. Plus, a ton of issues with the Rockstar creator props that has actually broken a ton of races, which honestly I don't think they're going to fix until probably the next DLC, because they haven't bothered yet. And there's also a new bug that will actually crash your game if you're the host of a race and you also happen to be the host of the main free mode lobby prior to hosting that race. So I just don't understand how they have such terrible game-breaking bugs in a brand new DLC. They definitely need better quality control, because obviously they have no one testing this, or maybe little to no testing. So yeah. Now, on a brighter note, Rockstar did introduce a ton of quality of life changes that I think were definitely needed to improve the gameplay experience, but they sort of ruined all of that by removing almost 200 cars as part of those supposed improvements. So with all of that, it's quite apparent that the team at Rockstar who made this DLC were given a very small time frame to work on it, and that's why it feels so rushed in a lot of aspects. And obviously the bigwigs at Rockstar got involved to make some controversial decisions of removing vehicles and immediately putting some of them in the new GTA Plus only dealership to obviously increase subscriptions and shark card sales. Plus the terrible payouts from the new missions and lackluster cars. Honestly, I'd rate this DLC a solid 3 out of 10, and the only reason it's even getting that high of a score is because of the new jet and the Avenger upgrades. They're really the only saving grace of this update, because if it wasn't for those 2, I'd probably give this DLC a 2 out of 10. Everything else in the update is sort of eh. I think it's overall one of the worst DLCs we've ever had in GTA Online. Seeing how lackluster the Drug Wars DLC was, I have my expectations pretty low for this DLC, but somehow Rockstar managed to do even worse than what I was expecting. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments and how you would rate this update, and if you agree with some of my arguments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.